Our lives are sustained by struggle and resilience. And then our mother, or father, or caregiver puts a reassuring hand on us. We were born to struggle, and we are wired to comfort and to reassure people who are struggling. This is blessing and being blessed in a nutshell. God's firm hand reassures us in our struggles. A lot of studies have shown that babies need, above all else, human touch. It strengthens them, it gives them resilience and power, and helps them to live a full life. The drives that God has created us with can either be healthy or they can be unhealthy. To be driven can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. There are a lot of jokes about people being hard-headed, right? But if you think about it, it can either be good or bad, depending on what you're hard-headed about. Because you can be hard-headed about good things, about things that are right in front. Jacob was a mixed bag. And we know that nature teaches us this is a chrysalis and has become a symbol for the struggle to come to all of our fullness. And an object that once looked dead comes to life and becomes something beautiful. And we shouldn't think that any good thing that's worth striving for in this life comes without that struggle. How many of you here have ever seen a calf being born? A few of you have seen a calf. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Wow. It's also spooky, right? The noises, the uncertainty of breech and the birth. I never know when someone says they're expecting whether to congratulate them or to pray for them, because birth can be a very scary thing, and it never happens the way we believe that it will happen. our life in uncertainty and struggle. And we can see this among giraffes. Mother giraffes, after they give birth to their baby that can stand, kicks the legs out from underneath the baby so that the baby learns to be able to stand on its own. My mother did that to me, too. I'm sure that you had that experience. In a way, that's our life, right? We have to do some difficult things to get to the good things. Some people commit themselves to intentional spiritual growth, and that takes place in a lot of places. Some people go to boot camp, and it changes your identity. Some people go to college or to seminary. Some people go to intentional parenting classes that completely change their life. Native Americans have a ritual. It's called a vision quest. And I've known people who've gone on it. I always kind of wonder if this story about Jacob also is about that kind of life-changing, intentional spiritual growth. We travel throughout Scotland and England, and it's amazing how many cairns, piles of rocks, and stone formations are found throughout the British Isles. Those stones mark things we don't know about, but in today, Jacob marks this spot so that he has a memorial to help him to remember what happened there. Today, some of you have diplomas from institutions. Some of you have markers. Some of you have awards. Some of you have diplomas. And we all have these markers of the journey that we've been on to spiritual growth and to deeper understanding of life. And one thing that this story tells us is that our pain and our struggle are also our greatest resources. And there is no genuine commitment and no growth at all without an honest wrestling with the key questions of life, without a quest into a dangerous place in a wilderness. Progress always involves risk. So here's, in my mind, Jacob's hometown. I love this sign. Welcome to Portales, this is Texas. Home of 17,000 friendly people and 3 or 4 old grouches. See at the bottom of the screen? One of those welcome to town, trying to be creative. You wonder how that passed city council and who the 3 or 4 grouches are. But in Israel, that would have been Jacob. They would have put that on the sign. Because Jacob has this worldview, and he's proved it by the way he treats people. He has this life story that goes something like, I've got mine. I'll take care of myself. Let that sucker Laban take care of himself. If I tricked him, it was his own fault for being tricked. And it was the code of the West. Sometimes it's still a personal code that you and I know people who have that code. Fear, anxiety, avoidance are a way of life for some people. And so the first step to spiritual growth is to honestly wrestle with the truth and to be truthful. We've known these folks. This really is a theme that comes out in much literature and in history. Oh, does this look familiar to anybody? Haunted Forest, Witch's Castle, 1 Mile, some of you, great iconic movie. There's Wizard of Oz. There you go, Wizard of Oz. Lions and tigers and bears, remember? And this was called the Forest of No Return, right? This is the Jabbok River. If you understand the Forest of No Return, you understand the Jabbok River. Luke Skywalker finds Yoda in Return of the Jedi at Dagobah. and he finds that he can trust in the force. Remember that training? I should have had a picture of it. Yoda's on his back, weighing him down. The Jabbok River was a terrible place. It was known as a place where people could ambush you. The currents were strong, the banks were steep, there were wild animals around, and to top it all off, Jacob has something of an unsettled heart because of his past relationships. There was a Bible that was published in the 1800s, and Gustav Doré illustrated the different stories. And so from time to time, you'll see these little lithographs available. And I actually have a couple of them that are framed, and we have them in the house. This is the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. So you have to fully appreciate Jacob's position here. He has his wives, he has his children, he has his livestock, he has all his worldly goods. And it says he forded the Jabbok. That means he put these things on his back and went over one by one and took them over to the other side for safety. And he came back to the other side. Jacob's sons had violated an agreement with a neighbor, and they ran away. Jacob himself owes child support, so he went to work in Canada so they couldn't garnish his wages. Not exactly like that, but you get the idea. His wife died, his father died, his oldest son betrayed him. He cheated Esau, he cheated Laban. He has regrets, perhaps, and remorse, and he's running away. Like a lot of people who burned all their bridges. So Jacob is there on the edge of the wilderness, and he's got to be tired, right? And he's got to think, why am I doing all this? What have I done to myself? Why am I out here in the wilderness? All those kinds of questionings that people go through. And this really defines the lives of so many people today in our economy. There's no direction. There's no ability to think of any higher vision like building toward the beloved community or creating caring community for that matter. It's all about survival. And as Christians, what we do at that river is that we leave all of our bitterness there. We leave behind that life of living as an individual and begin to live lives in community for God. So, I hope today that you see in Jacob that we need to resist the urge to isolate ourselves and to feel like we are the only one who has suffered these very natural human struggles. And sometimes, instead of wrestling with someone else or a family member, perhaps like Jacob, we should be wrestling with ourselves. This last week, we had a great weekend last week with a group of psychology students from Heidelberg University. It's university now. Heidelberg University. And they were exploring vocation in psychology. And so we had a person from NA who came in, who was a counselor, drug counselor, and we went to a local women's shelter. And they both said the same thing. They said that people usually enter rehab on average 7 times before they come out clean. Women usually visit a shelter 7 times before their situation is corrected. 7 times. How many helpful people are included in that effort? Seven times over to move people on to the other side of the Jabbok. When he has a litany of people that he cheated. Recovery groups say, taking a full inventory of the people that I have harmed. What does a life look like for Jacob? So we always wrestle with ourselves. And we need to be aware that we have some inner demons that we project out onto other people. into the world. And Jacob finally realized that perhaps he was responsible for some of these problems, and he couldn't run anymore. So in order to cheat Isaac and Esau and Laban, he had to make up a false narrative about them, right? That it was their own fault because they got cheated. It was their own fault. It wasn't my fault. I was just doing what everybody ought to be doing, getting mine. And they needed to watch out for theirs. And we know that this ends in a tearful reunion with his brother Esau, who has already completely forgiven Jacob. And he doesn't know that that grace is available to him. He doesn't go back home because the demons are inside of him. I really think it's a great story. Primarily, I like it because of the name change. Okay, he goes from Jacob, which means something like a grappler. It actually literally means something like a heel. Now, some of you from a previous generation, my parents talked that way. He's a real heel. For those of you, you know what that means? It means he's someone that's going to step on you. I think that's where that comes from. He's a real heel. Some people familiar with that? Yeah, it kind of comes from that. And after his transformation, he has a name change. He becomes Israel, which means one who wrestles with God and with humans and yet prevails. Wouldn't it be great if we had a faith where we could say, we wrestle with the important issues of the day and we don't shy away from it? Because we know if we hang on to those issues and we keep working on them, that in the end, we, like Jacob, will be changed and we will receive a blessing. This is a great story from Genesis 48. It's the final proof that Jacob, as Israel, is now reformed because his son Joseph tries to trick him into the same thing that his father fell for. You see, not sure who it is that's holding him up, but the guy on the far left is Israel, or Jacob, and the guy on the right is Joseph, and the two children are Joseph's children. And he's trying to get the blessing on the right kid there, you see? So there's this subtle crossing of hands, as if there's another trick going on. And because he knows all the tricks, you know those people that know all the tricks already, so they don't get tricked? You know that guy? That's who Israel became. We always say, can you tell me what kind of a person he was? You imagine what they did at Jacob's funeral? He was a person who had a transformation. We have people who have transformations. All of us have to transform. We got to leave our past behind, a lot of us, right? And we have to grab a hold of the future. And I hope that you do that. I can tell you who Jacob was. Jacob was a trickster archetype. He was you. He was me. We think he was a historical character. No, he's you. He's me. And whenever we get tired, whenever we don't want to do that stuff anymore, whenever we're alone, whenever we've done it for the 7th time and we don't want to do it for the 8th time, then God can visit us. Like Paul, like Elijah, like Jesus. Now, Paul was another example of a trickster's type. He was fighting against the Christians. He was struggling with his own demons, and he had that experience on the road, and he changed. So we can say that when I fail other people. When I am successful, every other person will share in that success. That's what Paul said. He said, I am every man. Every man is me. We share in our sufferings. This is all Paul. Just like Jesus. John Calvin pointed out that Psalm 34 is probably about this story about Jacob on the Jabbok River. And this is verse 4. And I want you to join with me in it. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. but we are also hardwired to be with people in their struggles. And what was it that kept Jacob alive? What was it that kept him from not receiving the blessing? He stayed with struggle. He held on. He held on until morning, until he received the blessing out of the struggle. So if you hold on until the morning, you will receive a blessing. And you have to let that firm hand of God's gentle guidance reassure you in those evenings of doubt.